The guidance counselor's office smelled like stale coffee and disappointment. Mrs. Henderson sat across from me at her cluttered desk. My academic file spread open between us like evidence of a crime I hadn't realized I was committing. The fluorescent light above us flickered intermittently, casting shadows that made her already stern expression look even more disapproving. "Well, Claire," she said, adjusting her glasses as she reviewed my transcript. "Let's be realistic about your options." I shifted uncomfortably in the plastic chair, my hands folded tightly in my lap. It was spring of my junior year at Riverside High, and this meeting was supposed to help me plan for college applications. Instead, it felt like a sentencing hearing. "Your GPA is 3.2, Mrs. Henderson continued, her voice carrying the tone of someone delivering bad news. "That's adequate. Your SAT scores are right in the middle range. Nothing exceptional, but not terrible either. Adequate. Middle range. Nothing exceptional." Each phrase hit like a small slap, confirming what I had suspected about myself for years, but had never heard stated so bluntly by an adult whose job it was to encourage students. "Have you given any thought to community college?" she asked, and I could hear the subtle implication in her question. Community college was where average students went when they couldn't get into real universities, where dreams were downsized to fit more modest realities. "I was hoping to apply to state," I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe study theater or communications." Mrs. Henderson's eyebrows rose slightly, and she made a note in my file that I couldn't read from where I sat. "Theater," she repeated, and the way she said it made it sound like I had suggested becoming a professional unicorn trainer. "That's a very competitive field, Claire. Very few people make a living in the arts." "I know it's competitive," I said, trying to inject some confidence into my voice. "But I love performing. I've been in every school play since freshman year." "Yes, I see that here," she said, glancing at my extracurricular activities. "But Claire, you need to understand that participation doesn't necessarily indicate talent. Lots of students enjoy theater as a hobby. A hobby." She had just reduced the thing I cared most about. The activity that made me feel most alive and authentic, to a casual pastime. I felt something inside me shrink. The small flame of ambition that had been burning steadily for 3 years, suddenly flickering in the wind of her dismissal. "What I'm suggesting," Mrs. Henderson continued, "is that you focus on more practical options. Business administration, perhaps, or education. Something stable, something that matches your academic profile." My academic profile, another euphemism for average, for unremarkable, for the kind of student who filled seats and met minimum requirements, but never stood out in any meaningful way. I had heard these assessments before, of course, not always stated so directly, but implied in 1,000 small ways throughout my high school career. I was the student teachers called on when they needed someone reliable, but not brilliant, to answer a straightforward question. I was the one who got B's and C's with the occasional A minus when I worked extra hard. I was the one who participated in group projects without ever being chosen as the leader. In the hallways of Riverside High, there were clear hierarchies: the academic stars, who took AP classes and competed for valedictorian; the athletes, who wore their letter jackets like armor and commanded respect through physical prowess; the popular kids who seemed to navigate social situations with an ease I could never master. And then there was everyone else. The vast middle ground of students who weren't failing but weren't excelling, who weren't troublemakers but weren't standouts, who moved through their high school years like background characters in someone else's story. I was firmly planted in that middle ground, and everyone seemed to think that's where I belonged. "I'll think about what you've said," I told Mrs. Henderson, gathering my backpack and preparing to leave. The meeting had lasted less than 15 minutes, but it felt like it had fundamentally altered my understanding of my own potential. "Good," she said, already reaching for the next student's file. "And Claire, remember, there's nothing wrong with being realistic about your abilities. Not everyone can be exceptional." I walked out of her office and into the crowded hallway, where students were rushing between classes, laughing with friends, living their lives with the kind of confidence I envied. I felt invisible among them, just another average face in an average crowd, destined for an average future. But as I passed the theater wing of the school, I heard something that made me pause. It was the sound of voices in harmony, students rehearsing for the spring musical. The auditorium doors were propped open, and I could see the cast on stage, their faces bright with concentration and joy as they worked through a particularly challenging number. I had auditioned for the musical 3 weeks ago, along with 60 other students competing for 30 roles. The callback list had been posted yesterday, and my name hadn't been on it. Another confirmation of my averageness, another reminder that wanting something badly wasn't the same as being good enough to get it. Claire's voice called from behind me, and I turned to see Mr. Rodriguez, the theater director, jogging down the hallway toward me. "I've been looking for you." Mr. Rodriguez was the kind of teacher who made students feel seen, who remembered details about their lives and genuinely cared about their growth. He was also the person whose opinion mattered most to me, the adult who had encouraged my love of theater even when I doubted my own abilities. "I wanted to talk to you about the musical," he said, slightly out of breath from his jog. "I know you didn't make callbacks, and I wanted to explain why." I braced myself for another gentle letdown, another kind but firm explanation of my limitations. "The role you auditioned for, Sarah, the female lead's written for a very specific type of performer," he continued. "Someone with a big, belting voice and a commanding stage presence. That's not your strength, and I didn't want to set you up for disappointment." I nodded, trying to look understanding, even though I felt like crying. This was exactly what I had expected to hear. "But," Mr. Rodriguez said, and something in his tone made me look up. "I have a different proposition for you." He paused, studying my face with the intensity of someone making an important decision. "I'm directing a one-act play for the State Drama Festival," he said. "It's a small cast, just 3 actors, Sand. It's a much more intimate, character-driven piece. I think you'd be perfect for the lead role." I stared at him, certain I had misheard. "The lead role. It's called The Memory Keeper," he explained. "It's about a young woman who discovers a box of letters in her grandmother's attic and has to piece together a family secret. It requires someone who can convey complex emotions with subtlety. Someone who can make the audience believe in the character's journey without relying on big theatrical gestures." "But I'm not," I started to say, then stopped myself. I had been about to say I'm not good enough, but something in Mr. Rodriguez's expression made me reconsider. "Claire," he said gently, "I've been teaching theater for 15 years. I know talent when I see it. You have something special in naturalism, an emotional honesty that can't be taught. You just need the right role to showcase it." I felt something shift inside me, a small crack appearing in the wall of self-doubt that had been building for years. "The festival is in 6 weeks," he continued. "If we place in the top 3, we advance to regionals. If we win regionals, we go to state. Are you interested?" I thought about Mrs. Henderson's words, about being realistic and practical, and average. Then I thought about the feeling I got when I was on stage, the sense of coming alive that I experienced nowhere else. "Yes," I said, my voice stronger than it had been all day. "I'm interested." The script for The Memory Keeper was unlike anything I had ever read. Where the school's usual productions were filled with big musical numbers and broad comedy, this play was quiet, introspective, demanding a kind of emotional vulnerability that terrified and excited me in equal measure. I spent the first week of rehearsals feeling like an imposter. The other 2 actors, Marcus Webb, a senior who had been the male lead in every production for 3 years, and Sophia Chen, a junior, with a voice that could fill the auditorium without a microphone, seemed to inhabit their characters effortlessly. They moved through their scenes with the kind of confidence that comes from years of being told, "You're talented." I, on the other hand, felt like I was pretending to be an actor. Like at any moment, Mr. Rodriguez would realize his mistake and replace me with someone more deserving. "You're overthinking it, Claire," he said during our 3rd rehearsal, after I had stumbled through the same monologue for the 5th time. "Stop trying to perform the emotion and just feel it." "I don't know how," I admitted, my frustration evident in my voice. Everyone else makes it look so easy. Mr. Rodriguez sat down in the front row of the empty auditorium, his expression thoughtful. Can I tell you something about Marcus and Sophia? I nodded, grateful for any insight that might help me understand why I felt so out of place. They're both technically excellent performers, he said. They have strong voices, good stage presence, natural charisma. They're the kind of actors who can walk into any audition and impress people immediately. Exactly, I said. That's what I mean. I'm not like them. No, you're not, Mr. Rodriguez agreed. And that's exactly why I cast you in this role. I must have looked confused because he continued with a gentle smile. Marcus and Sophia are performers. They know how to project emotion, how to make sure the audience sees and hears everything they're doing. But you, Claire, you're an actor. There's a difference. I don't understand the difference. A performer shows the audience what they want them to see, he explained. An actor becomes the character so completely that the audience forgets they're watching a performance at all. You don't project emotion, Claire, you live it. And that's much rarer and much more powerful. I wanted to believe him, but the evidence of my own averageness seemed overwhelming. In English class, I was the student who understood the books, but never had the brilliant insights that made teachers' eyes light up. In history, I could memorize dates and facts, but struggled to make the kind of connections that earned A's. In math, I worked twice as hard as my classmates to achieve half their success. What if you're wrong about me? I asked. What if I'm just as average at this as I am at everything else? Mr. Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment, and I could see him choosing his words carefully. Claire, can I ask you something? Why do you think you're average? The question caught me off guard. It seemed so obvious that I wasn't sure how to answer, because that's what everyone tells me, I said finally. My grades are average. My test scores are average. My guidance counselor basically said I should lower my expectations because I'm not exceptional at anything. And you believe that? Shouldn't I? I mean, the evidence is pretty clear. Mr. Rodriguez leaned forward in his seat, his expression intense. Claire, do you know what your problem is? You're measuring yourself by the wrong standards. What do you mean? You're trying to be exceptional at being like everyone else, he said. You're competing in games you were never meant to play, using rules that were designed for different kinds of minds. I thought about this, trying to understand what he was getting at. Some people are naturally good at standardized tests, he continued. Some people have the kind of analytical minds that excel in traditional academic settings. Some people are born with the ability to memorize facts and regurgitate them on command. But that doesn't make them better than you, it just makes them different. But those are the things that matter, I protested. Those are the things that get you into college, that determine your future. Are they? Mr. Rodriguez asked. Or are those just the things that are easy to measure? Over the following weeks, as we continued rehearsing The Memory Keeper, I began to understand what he meant. The play required me to access emotions I had never explored on stage before: grief, confusion, the complex mix of love and resentment that can exist within families, and somehow, despite my lack of technical training, despite my average grades and test scores, I found I could do it. Not perform it, live it. When my character discovered the first letter in her grandmother's attic, I felt the genuine shock of uncovering a family secret. When she read about her grandmother's lost love, I experienced the bittersweet ache of understanding that the people we think we know completely are often mysteries to us. When she confronted her mother about the lies that had shaped their family history, I felt the righteous anger and desperate need for truth that drove the character's journey. That's it, Mr. Rodriguez said after a particularly intense rehearsal. That's exactly what this role needs. But even as I began to feel more confident in rehearsals, the outside world continued to reinforce my sense of averageness. I failed a chemistry test, despite studying for hours. I got a C+ on an English essay that I thought was my best work. I watched classmates receive college acceptance letters while I was still struggling to decide where to apply. Maybe Mrs. Henderson was right. I told my best friend Amy during lunch one day, maybe I should be more realistic about my abilities. Amy, who had been listening to me doubt myself for months, finally lost patience. "Claire, are you kidding me right now?" she said, her voice sharp with frustration. "Do you know what you're like when you talk about theater? You light up. You become this completely different person, confident, passionate, alive. And you're telling me you want to give that up because some guidance counselor thinks you should study business? But what if I'm not actually good at it?" I asked. "What if I just think I am because I love it so much?" "Then you're an idiot," Amy said bluntly. "Because I've seen you on stage, Claire. I've watched you become other people so completely that I forget you're my friend who can't parallel park and cries during commercials. You have a gift that apparently isn't good enough to get me cast in the school musical. A gift that got you chosen for a one-act play that could take you to state competition," Amy countered. "A gift that made Mr. Rodriguez, who could have picked anyone, choose you for the lead role." I wanted to believe her. Wanted to trust that maybe there was something special about me after all. But years of being told I was average had created a voice in my head that whispered doubts every time I started to feel confident. That voice got louder as the drama festival approached. I watched Marcus and Sophia prepare for their roles with the easy confidence of people who had never doubted their abilities. And I felt the familiar pang of inadequacy. "What if I forget my lines?" I asked Mr. Rodriguez during our final dress rehearsal. "What if I freeze up? What if I'm not good enough and everyone realizes you made a mistake casting me?" He stopped adjusting the set pieces and looked at me with the kind of patience that comes from years of working with anxious teenagers. "Claire," he said, "do you trust me?" "Of course." "Then trust my judgment about your talent. Trust that I know what I'm doing when I cast actors. Trust that I wouldn't put you in this position if I didn't believe you could succeed." "But what if no?" he interrupted gently. "No more what ifs. You've done the work. You know this character inside and out. You've found the truth in every scene, the honesty in every moment. Now you just have to trust yourself enough to let that truth shine through." As I stood in the wings the next morning, waiting for our first performance at the Regional Drama Festival, I thought about all the times I had been called average. All the ways I had been told to lower my expectations and be realistic about my abilities. And for the first time in my life, I wondered if maybe they had all been wrong. Maybe I wasn't average at everything. Maybe I was exceptional at the one thing that mattered most. The Regional Drama Festival was held at the Civic Center in the county seat, a sprawling complex that felt both exciting and intimidating. Schools from across the region had gathered to compete, and the energy in the building was electric, with nervous anticipation and competitive determination. I had never performed for strangers before. At school, the audience was filled with familiar faces, friends, teachers, parents who knew me and were predisposed to be supportive. Here, the judges were theater professionals from the state university. People who had seen hundreds of student productions and had no reason to be generous with their critiques. "Remember," Mr. Rodriguez said as we gathered backstage, "you're not competing against the other schools. You're simply telling your story as truthfully as possible. The rest will take care of itself." Marcus and Sophia nodded confidently, but I felt my stomach churning with anxiety. Through the curtain, I could hear the audience settling into their seats, the low murmur of conversation that would soon give way to expectant silence. "Places, everyone," the stage manager called, and suddenly it was time. I walked onto the stage and took my position at the simple set-a recreation of an attic, complete with old trunks, dusty furniture, and the box of letters that would drive the entire story. The lights dimmed, and in the darkness before the play began, I felt something shift inside me. All the doubt, all the anxiety, all the voices telling me I was average, they didn't matter here. Here, in this moment, I wasn't Claire Morrison, the B student with mediocre test scores and modest ambitions. I was Sarah, a young woman about to uncover a family secret that would change everything she thought she knew about herself. The lights came up, and I began. "I never knew my grandmother kept secrets," I said. my voice carrying clearly through the auditorium as I opened the first trunk. She seemed like the kind of person who said exactly what she thought, who lived her life without apology or regret. As I spoke, I felt the familiar transformation that happened when I was truly connected to a character. The audience disappeared, the judges disappeared, even my own self-consciousness disappeared. There was only Sarah, only her story, only the truth of her journey. I found the box of letters exactly as we had rehearsed, but when I opened it and read the first one aloud, something magical happened. The words weren't just lines I had memorized, they were discoveries I was making for the first time. Revelations that surprised and moved me, even though I had spoken them dozens of times before. "My dearest Margaret," I read, my voice catching with genuine emotion. "I know I promised to wait for you, but the war has changed everything. I can't ask you to build your life around a man who may never come home." As the play progressed, I felt myself sinking deeper into Sarah's world, experiencing her confusion and anger and ultimate understanding as if they were my own emotions. When Marcus entered as Sarah's father, trying to explain why the family had hidden the truth about her grandmother's lost love, I felt the character's frustration with an intensity that surprised me. "You had no right to keep this from me," I said, and the words came out with a force that made Marcus blink in surprise. "These letters, this story, it's part of who I am. You can't just decide what parts of our family history I'm allowed to know." In the audience, I could sense a shift in attention, a quality of listening that felt different from the polite attention of a school assembly. These people were genuinely engaged, genuinely moved by what they were seeing. When Sophia entered as Sarah's mother, the emotional stakes of the play reached their peak. The three characters had to navigate years of buried secrets and unspoken resentments, and I found myself accessing emotions I didn't know I possessed. "She loved him until the day she died," I said, holding up the final letter in the box. "Even after she married grandfather, even after she built a life with him, part of her heart belonged to the boy who never came home from the war. And you thought that made her weak, didn't you? You thought it made her less than the perfect grandmother you wanted me to remember." The confrontation that followed was the most challenging scene in the play, requiring all three actors to balance anger with love, truth with compassion. But instead of feeling overwhelmed by the emotional demands, I felt energized by them. This was what I had been born to do, to live truthfully in imaginary circumstances. To find the universal human experiences within specific fictional situations. As the play reached its conclusion, with Sarah finally understanding that her grandmother's capacity for love-given, lost love was a source of strength rather than weakness, I felt a profound sense of completion. Not just because the performance was ending, but because I had discovered something fundamental about myself. "I used to think that moving on meant forgetting," I said in the final monologue, carefully placing the letters back in their box. "But now I understand that sometimes the most important thing we can do is remember. Remember the love that shaped us, the losses that taught us, the secrets that, when finally revealed, help us understand who we really are." The lights faded to black, and for a moment, the auditorium was completely silent. Then the applause began, not the polite, obligatory clapping of a school audience, but the kind of sustained, enthusiastic response that indicated genuine appreciation. As we took our bows, I caught sight of the judges in the front row. They weren't just clapping, they were leaning forward in their seats, their expressions engaged and impressed. One of them was actually wiping tears from her eyes. "That was incredible," Marcus whispered as we walked off stage. "Claire, I've never seen you perform like that before. You were completely present," Sophia added. I felt like I was really talking to Sarah, not just delivering lines to another actor. But it was Mr. Rodriguez's reaction that meant the most to me. He was waiting in the wings with an expression of pure joy and vindication, like someone who had just watched a long-held theory proven correct. "I knew it," he said, pulling me into a hug. "I knew you had this in you." "Did we do okay?" I asked, still processing what had just happened. "Claire," he said, holding me at arm's length so he could look directly into my eyes, "that was exceptional. Exceptional." The word I had never heard applied to myself. The quality that guidance counselors and teachers and standardized tests had assured me I lacked. We had to wait 2 hours for the results to be announced. During that time, I watched other schools perform their UNOCs, and while many of them were technically proficient, I began to understand what Mr. Rodriguez had meant about the difference between performing and acting. Some of the actors were clearly talented. They had strong voices, good stage presence, impressive technical skills, but few of them seemed to truly inhabit their characters the way I had felt myself. Inhabiting Sarah, they were showing the audience what they wanted them to see, rather than simply being truthful in the moment. When the judges finally announced the results, I was so nervous I could barely breathe. Third place goes to Westfield High School for their production of The Importance of Being Earnest. The head judge announced. My heart sank. If we hadn't placed in the top 3, our season was over. Second place goes to Central Academy for their production of Our Town. I felt Mr. Rodriguez tense beside me. There was only one spot left. And first place, advancing to the state competition, goes to Riverside High School for their production of The Memory Keeper. The auditorium erupted in cheers from our small section of supporters, but I could barely process what had just happened. We had won. We were going to state, but more than that, I had discovered something about myself that changed everything I thought I knew about my own abilities. I wasn't average at everything. I was exceptional at the one thing that mattered most to me. The weeks leading up to the State Drama Festival passed in a blur of intensive rehearsals, media interviews, and a kind of attention I had never experienced before. Suddenly, I wasn't just Claire Morrison, the average student who blended into the background. I was Claire Morrison, the lead actress in the play that had won regionals. The girl who was representing our school at the state level. The transformation in how people saw me was both exhilarating and surreal. Teachers who had never noticed me before stopped me in the hallways to wish me luck. Classmates who had never spoken to me asked for details about the upcoming competition. Even Mrs. Henderson, the guidance counselor who had encouraged me to be realistic about my abilities, requested a meeting to discuss my college plans. I've been thinking about our conversation from last spring, she said, her tone noticeably different from our previous meeting. Perhaps we should revisit some of your options. I sat in the same plastic chair where she had told me I was average, but everything felt different now. I felt different. I'm still interested in studying theater, I said, my voice steady and confident in a way it hadn't been months earlier. Of course, she said, shuffling through a new stack of college brochures. I've been researching some excellent programs. The State University has a very strong theater department, and with your recent success, I think you'd be a competitive applicant. It was remarkable how winning a regional competition had suddenly made me competitive in her eyes, how the same grades and test scores that had been adequate before were now apparently sufficient for programs she had previously deemed out of reach. There are also some smaller liberal arts colleges with outstanding theater programs, she continued, places that value artistic achievement as much as academic performance. I listened politely, but I was thinking about how arbitrary these assessments seemed, how much they depended on external validation rather than any real understanding of a person's potential. The local newspaper ran a feature story about our upcoming state competition, complete with photos from our performance and quotes from the judges who had praised our authentic emotional depth and remarkable ensemble work. Reading about myself in print was strange. The girl they described sounded confident and talented. Nothing like the average student I had believed myself to be for so long. Drama student defies expectations, the headline read, and I wondered if the irony was intentional. My parents, who had always been supportive but perhaps not entirely convinced that theater was a practical pursuit, began to see my passion in a new light. I never understood what you saw in all this, my father admitted as we drove to the state competition. I thought it was just a phase, something you'd outgrow when you got serious about your future. And now? I asked. Now I see that this is your future, he said. Watching you on that stage, seeing how you transform when you're performing, it's like you become the person you were always meant to be. The State Drama Festival was held at the university's Performing Arts Center, a magnificent theater with professional lighting and sound systems that made our high school auditorium seem quaint by comparison. Schools from across the state had gathered for the competition, representing the best student theater in the region. Backstage, I could feel the nervous energy of dozens of young performers preparing for what many of them considered the most important performance of their lives. Some were clearly veterans of this level of competition. They moved with the easy confidence of students from well-funded arts programs at prestigious schools. Others, like us, seemed slightly overwhelmed by the scale and significance of the event. "How are you feeling?" Mr. Rodriguez asked as we prepared for our final dress rehearsal on the university stage. "Different," I said, and it was the most honest answer I could give. Different how? Like I'm not the same person who auditioned for the spring musical and didn't get a call back. I said, like I'm not the same person who sat in Mrs. Henderson's office being told to lower my expectations. "You're not," he said simply. "You've discovered who you really are when you stop trying to be who everyone else thinks you should be." That evening, as I stood in the wings waiting for our performance to begin, I thought about the journey that had brought me to this moment. 6 months ago, I had been convinced that I was destined for a life of mediocrity, that my dreams of studying theater were unrealistic fantasies that I needed to abandon in favor of more practical pursuits. Now I was about to perform on a professional stage in front of judges from major universities, competing against the best student actors in the state. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. It had been a gradual process of learning to trust my instincts, to value my own unique strengths, instead of measuring myself against standards that were never designed for someone like me. Places, everyone. The stage manager called, and I took my position on the set. As the lights came up and I began Sarah's journey once again, I felt the same magical transformation that had happened at regionals. But this time, there was an additional layer of confidence, a deeper trust in my own abilities. I had performed this role dozens of times now, but each performance revealed new depths, new moments of truth that I hadn't discovered before. That was the gift Mr. Rodriguez had helped me recognize, not just the ability to memorize lines and hit marks, but the capacity to find something genuine and surprising in every moment. The audience was more sophisticated than any I had performed for before theater students. Professors, industry professionals who attended the festival to scout emerging talent. But instead of feeling intimidated, I felt energized by their attention. When I reached the final monologue, the moment when Sarah finally understands that her grandmother's capacity for love was a source of strength rather than weakness, I felt a profound connection not just to the character, but to my own journey. "I used to think that being different meant being wrong," I said, the words carrying a personal truth that went beyond the script. "But now I understand that sometimes the most important thing we can do is embrace what makes us unique, even when the world tells us we should be something else." The applause that followed was the most sustained and enthusiastic we had received. As we took our bows, I could see audience members on their feet, their faces reflecting genuine appreciation for what they had just witnessed. But it was the reaction of the judges that told me something extraordinary had happened. They weren't just clapping, they were exchanging meaningful looks, making notes, clearly engaged in the kind of discussion that indicated we had made a real impression. After all the schools had performed, we gathered in the theater for the awards ceremony. The categories included technical achievement, ensemble work, and individual acting awards. But the prize everyone wanted was the overall excellence award that would mark the best production in the state. The award for outstanding individual performance by a female actor, the head judge announced, goes to Claire Morrison of Riverside High School for her portrayal of Sarah in The Memory Keeper. I felt the world tilt slightly as my name echoed through the theater. An individual acting award at the state level, something I had never even dared to dream about when I was sitting in Mrs. Henderson's office, being told to be realistic about my abilities. As I walked to the stage to accept the award, I thought about all the people who had called me average, who had encouraged me to lower my expectations, who had measured my worth by standards that had nothing to do with my actual gifts. They had been wrong. Not because I had suddenly become a different person, but because they had been looking at the wrong things all along. This award recognizes not just technical skill, the judge said as she handed me the trophy, but the kind of authentic emotional truth that cannot be taught. Ms. Morrison's performance demonstrated a rare ability to find the universal within the specific, to make an audience believe completely in the reality of her character's journey. As I stood on that stage holding an award that recognized me as exceptional in the thing I cared most about, I realized that the real victory wasn't the trophy or the recognition. It was the discovery that I had never been average at all. I had just been measuring myself by the wrong standards. The months following the State Drama Festival felt like living in a completely different world. The girl who had once been told she was adequate and middle range was now being courted by college, theater programs across the country. The same guidance counselor who had suggested community college was now helping me navigate scholarship offers and artistic portfolio requirements. But the most profound change wasn't in how others saw MIT, was in how I saw myself. I returned to Riverside High for my senior year with a confidence I had never possessed before. Not arrogance or superiority, but a quiet certainty about my own worth that couldn't be shaken by test scores or grade point averages. "You carry yourself differently," Amy observed during one of our lunch conversations. "It's like you finally figured out who you are." She was right. I had spent the first 3 years of high school trying to excel at things that didn't come naturally to me, measuring my worth by standards that had nothing to do with my actual strengths. Now, I understood that excellence wasn't about being good at everything. It was about being exceptional at the things that mattered to you. My academic performance didn't dramatically improve, while I was still a B student in most subjects, still struggled with standardized tests, still found advanced mathematics nearly incomprehensible. But these limitations no longer defined my sense of self. "I've been thinking about what you said," I told Mr. Rodriguez during one of our regular check-ins, "about the difference between performers and actors." "What about it?" "I think the same principle applies to students," I said. "Some people are good at performing the role of successful student. They know how to take tests, how to write the essays teachers want to read, how to play the academic game, but that doesn't necessarily make them smarter or more capable than students who learn differently." Mr. Rodriguez smiled. "That's a very mature insight, Claire. What made you think of it?" "Watching my classmates," I said. "Some of the kids with the highest GPAs seem miserable, like they're constantly performing a version of themselves that doesn't feel authentic. And some of the kids who struggle academically are incredibly creative and insightful. They just don't fit the traditional mold." This realization had broader implications for how I thought about success and achievement. I began to notice how many different types of intelligence and talent existed in our school. How many students were being overlooked or undervalued because their gifts didn't align with conventional academic measures. When college acceptance letters began arriving in the spring, I had options I never could have imagined a year earlier. The State University offered me a partial scholarship to their theater program. A small liberal arts college in Vermont offered a full ride based on my artistic achievements. A prestigious conservatory in New York invited me to audition for their highly competitive program. "A year ago, you were worried about getting into community college," my mother said as we reviewed the offers. "Now you're choosing between some of the best theater programs in the country." "It's surreal," I admitted. "Sometimes I feel like I'm living someone else's life." But it wasn't someone else's life, it was my life. Finally aligned with my authentic self, instead of constrained by other people's limited expectations. The most meaningful moment came during senior awards night, when I was called to the stage to receive the school's first ever award for excellence in the performing arts. As I walked across the same stage where I had felt so invisible for 3 years, I saw Mrs. Henderson in the audience, applauding with what looked like genuine pride. After the ceremony, she approached me with an expression that was part embarrassment, part admiration. Claire, she said, I owe you an apology. You don't, I started to say, but she held up her hand. Yes, I do. I made assumptions about your potential based on narrow criteria that didn't take into account your actual gifts. I almost convinced a remarkably talented young woman to settle for less than she deserved. You were doing your job, I said, surprised by how little resentment I felt. You were working with the information you had. But that's exactly the problem, she said. I should have been looking for more information, should have been trying to understand what made each student unique, instead of fitting everyone into the same predetermined categories. Her apology was gracious, but it also highlighted something important about how our educational system often fails to recognize diverse forms of intelligence and achievement. As graduation approached, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought me to this point. The girl who had once been called average was now the recipient of multiple college scholarships, state recognition for artistic achievement, and most importantly, a deep understanding of her own worth. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Mr. Rodriguez hadn't cast you in that play? Amy asked as we prepared for our final performance together in the spring musical. Sometimes, I said, but I think I would have found my way eventually. Maybe it would have taken longer, maybe I would have made some detours, but I think authentic talent has a way of revealing itself. Even when everyone tells you you're average, especially then, I said. Because when you finally discover what you're truly good at, it's even more meaningful because you had to fight for it. On graduation day, as I sat with my classmates in the same auditorium where I had discovered my calling, I thought about all the students who were still searching for their own moments of recognition, still trying to figure out where their unique gifts might flourish. During the ceremony, when they announced that I would be attending the State University on a theater scholarship, I heard genuine applause from classmates who had watched my transformation over the past year. But more importantly, I saw some younger students in the audience looking at me with the kind of hope I had once felt when watching older students achieve their dreams. After the ceremony, a sophomore named Katie approached me with shy determination. I've been thinking about auditioning for the fall play, she said, but I'm not sure I'm good enough. I'm not really good at anything else in school. I looked at this young woman who reminded me so much of myself just 2 years earlier, and I felt a responsibility to share what I had learned. Being good at other things in school doesn't determine whether you're good at theater, I told her. And being good at theater doesn't require you to be good at everything else. Your worth isn't determined by how well you fit someone else's definition of success. But what if I'm just average? She asked, and I heard my own former fears in her question. Then you'll be an average student who's exceptional at the thing that matters most to you, I said. And that's more than enough. As I walked across the stage to receive my diploma, I thought about the journey from being called average to being called exceptional, and I realized that the real transformation hadn't been in my abilities, it had been in my understanding of what those abilities were worth. Excellence isn't about being good at everything. It's about being extraordinary at the things that make you who you are.